tour.
Just an itty-bitty-bitty bought a couple on the road, driving in RV, pulling a toad. No place special to roam, not looking for a home. Won't you come along with us? We are RPlaceTravels.
So welcome to Charleston. My name is Alan. Our visitor center, an old railroad building, dates back to 1859, was recently remodeled, and they created space in front for special events. The first Charlestonians arrived from England in 1670. There were about 130 of them. The Spanish had laid claim to this area too. There are 5 houses that are open daily to the public, including the Aiken Red House. Across this intersection on the left, the big yellow house. Home of Governor William Aiken in the mid-1800s. It was last inherited by Francis Dill Rhett, who had married the governor's grandson.
Apparently those are outhouses. That one, that one. Slave quarters upstairs, kitchen on the downstairs. That's the stables and the carriage house. The slave quarters upstairs. And there's the main house.
But Francis lived there alone for years, pretty much let it fall into ruin before finally giving it to the Charleston Museum. And now it's open to the public, unrestored on the inside, but the outside returned to how it looked when Governor Aiken lived there. Really interesting house, only a block from the visitor center. It became a working class neighborhood, and by 1861 there were 271 people living on this street. About half were slaves, urban slaves doing urban jobs. About a fourth of the people on this street were Irish or German immigrants. The remaining fourth were free persons of color. Many, in fact, were slave owners themselves. This peninsula was more crowded then than it is now, simply because then it was impossible to live in the suburbs and work in town. By definition, a single house is 1 room wide, usually 2 rooms deep and usually turned sideways. The porch, which in Charleston we like to call a piazza. Most of the windows and the main entrance are on the windward side, which in Charleston is the southwest, because the breeze comes off the Ashley River. To our left, the Joseph Manigault House. Built in 1803, Charleston, as of 1803, was the wealthiest and the 5th largest city in the United States. The Manigauts were shipping merchants. They really had more money than the plantation owners. But I'm probably going to talk more about the American Revolution on this tour than the Civil War. King Street was the only road into town then. There were actually more Revolutionary War battles fought in South Carolina than any other state. The main building here on the right dates back to 1828. The scene of that wildly exaggerated Mel Gibson movie, The Patriot, in which they read the Declaration of Independence, was filmed here at the campus. So was the scene of the movie Cold Mountain, in which the hero meets the blind peanut man. The Second Empire Mansion, coming up to our left, has been made into a hotel, built in 1887 for Francis Silas Rogers. Rogers came here after the Civil War and made a fortune in cotton export. Lived there with his wife and 10 children. He had 13 actually. 10 made it into adulthood. When Charleston was a walled city, the town gate was here at Broad and Meeting. We would have been facing a drawbridge over a moat. But the wall came down, and they reserved a ½ acre at each of these 4 corners, each for a different public building. St. Michael's, Post Office, Courthouse, City Hall. It's called the 4 Corners of Law, because God, country, state, and city, 4 systems of law, are each represented. The term battery referred to a cluster or row of cannons down here at the tip of the peninsula. Like down here where the park is now, there was a 40-gun battery. So this whole neighborhood eventually came to be called the Battery, and it still is.
Battery.
South Battery.
South Battery Street. Nothing but old houses. Which one?
This one, I think.
It's either that one
I can't tell.
or that one.
That sure looks like the front door. It's going this direction, don't it?
Yeah, I think it's this one.
Yeah, okay.
This whole fence is different.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think it's this
you're
one.
right. But look at that. It looks like the front door on this
Yeah,
side.
it does.
John F. Kennedy lived down here at the Battery. It was when he was stationed here in the Navy, 1942. He was staying with a family around the corner. He would often rent a suite here at the Fort Sumter House Hotel to host his wild parties. And that's also where he had romantic liaisons with Inga Arvad. Kennedy was young and unmarried. Inga not quite as young, not quite as unmarried. A once divorced, former Danish beauty queen, former European journalist. Way out there in the middle of the horizon, 3.3 miles out, that flat thing all by itself is Fort Sumter. After South Carolina seceded from the Union in December of 1860, the U.S. troops who had been stationed at Fort Moultrie on Sullivan's Island, they knew they were going to be attacked, so they moved to their strongest position, which was Fort Sumter. As they waited out there, the Confederacy was formed, the presidency changed hands. Abraham Lincoln sent a fleet with troops and provisions, and Jefferson Davis ordered that the fort be attacked before the ships arrived. So the first shot of the first battle was fired from Fort Johnson, and began a bombardment that came not from here, but from points out there on either side. Down here, the Charlestonians were crowding the seawall and the piazzas and the rooftops watching. And after about a day and a half, they saw the white flag. So the first battle was over, no casualties. And then the Yankees left, and pretty much from then on, both Sumter and Charleston were held by the Confederacy.
Fire lamps. Pretty cool. Must be really cool at night.
It must be, yeah.
This is Rainbow Road to our left. Tenements from the 1920s. Nearly 1,000 people lived in this block. But by that time, people were moving in and restoring these as single-family homes. That's when it became Rainbow Road. The new homeowners in the 1920s were the ones who chose the bright pastels. There used to be a creek here north of the so-called French Quarter, but it was filled in when the city wanted to create a public food market. 4 of the original 5 buildings remain. If you got caught selling food any place else, you were subject to a $20 fine. Now the market buildings are occupied by vendors. So now that we're almost back at the visitor center, any questions? Thanks for taking the tour.
Poogan's Porch. We went there for dinner. Wonderful dinner. We wanted to have a nice dinner, so we actually looked up where most people go. The whole Queen Street is just full of restaurants. No reason why we picked it. It was just one of the ones that were on that street, and it was great. We had a wonderful dinner. The waiter was just fantastic.
It was actually built in 1891. So in 1976, they turned it into a restaurant.
That's what you want to go for, is to see the actual houses that they've preserved there.
The last resident of the site sold their home and moved away, leaving behind the neighborhood dog. The dog's name was Poogan.
Yeah, just kind of sat.
This is where we're staying at in Charleston.
Well, I thought it was wonderful. We were all by ourselves. We looked for RV parks, and they were all way outside of Charleston. We looked on HipCamp and paid a little bit more than what we're used to, but it was all worth it. I thought it was great.
Nothing here. There's the owner. There's us. And that's all that's here. No other spots, nothing. They rent out the one spot.
We were in a place that was all by itself. They only do one camper at a time. The only thing was, it was a little tight getting in there. The roads were a little tight getting in there.
The street's getting to it.
But I thought it was great.
No hookups.
No hookups, yeah. Dry camping and that, but I mean, we got in the Jeep and off we went to Charleston, and we were right there. We were very happy. I still don't want to go in there. Listen to something.
These are the restrooms. We're at Charleston Visitor Center for men and women. This is the bathroom. You just share. Each one has a little cubicle, but you share the whole thing. Excuse me.